Peruvian President Pedro Castillo is impeached and his vice, Dina Boluarte, is sworn in amid a constitutional crisis in Lima.
Russian President Vladimir Putin admits his Ukraine war could be drawn out over a long, undefined period of time, and that the use of nuclear warfare is simmering.
Peru has a new president and its first female leader, after ex-president Pedro Castillo was impeached by Congress. Dina Boluarte, previously the vice president, was sworn in amid a constitutional crisis in Lima. Earlier, Castillo had announced he was replacing Congress with an exceptional emergency government. Lawmakers prepared to debate an attempt to remove him from office. It was their third try since he came to office in July last year. In the last attempt to stay in power, Castillo declared he was going to rule by decree. Then the head of the Constitutional Court accused him of launching a coup d'etat, and lawmakers went ahead and impeached him. Footage was then released showing Castillo signing papers with prosecutors. Police say he has since been arrested. Lawyers are investigating 6 cases against Pedro Castillo, most of them for alleged corruption. Some of his detractors took to the streets to celebrate his ousting. Castillo has been locked in a power struggle with Congress since the Attorney General filed a complaint accusing him of heading a criminal organization. He and his family and allies are accused of handing out public contracts in exchange for kickbacks.
Ukrainian firefighters deal with the aftermath of Russian shelling in the eastern city of Bakhmut. Russian President Vladimir Putin has admitted that his war in Ukraine could turn into a long-term process, and he has warned that the threat of nuclear war is growing, although he claimed Russia would never be the first to use the weapons.
Our strategy for using them is namely as defense, as we consider weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons, as built around the so-called retaliatory strike. When we are hit, we strike back.
The United States has responded by slamming what it's called Putin's loose talk on nuclear weapons.
Any loose talk of nuclear weapons is absolutely irresponsible. It flies in the face of the very statement that Russia formally signed on to in January of this year in the context of the UN Security Council. It flies in the face of the statement that we've heard from Russian officials even in recent weeks, reaffirming that very simple principle about a nuclear war.
Meanwhile, the UN is set to release its report on human rights violations in Ukraine. It documents the deaths of 441 civilians in 3 regions as possible war crimes. Some were killed as they cut firewood or shopped for food. 25 people remain in detention in Germany on suspicion of plotting to overthrow the government. Wednesday's arrests amount to one of the biggest anti-extremism operations in modern German history. More details are coming to light as to what they had allegedly planned.
This group that has been eliminated today distinguished themselves by having been well connected throughout the country, by precise plans about what they were about to do, and the project has been indeed quite violence orientated. They were considering killing people.
The plotters are said to include members of the extremist Reichsbürger movement, which has long been known by German police for having racist and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Other suspects came from the QAnon movement, who believe their country is in the hands of a mythical deep state. A man named Heinrich XIII from an old aristocratic family is alleged to have been central to their plans.
Individuals were already earmarked to take over different portfolios, including a former member of the German Bundestag for the Justice one. In addition to this council, which was to plan a new statehood and a new state structure, there is, according to our knowledge, a military arm.
3,000 officers took part in 150 operations in Germany, with 2 more people arrested in Austria and Italy. The operation appears to indicate the extent of an alleged terrorist threat from extremists, but it's unclear how capable the group would have been in carrying out their plans.
Croatia is expected to fully integrate into the European Schengen area from January the 1st, 2023. However, this news raises concerns amongst its non-EU neighbors, such as Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia. They fear they will become even more isolated, as Zagreb will have to harden its borders with them.
There's a possibility that the controls could become sloppier and slow down the whole thing even more. I don't see things getting any better.
The Croatian border police has been implementing all the legal procedures of the European Union since the day they entered the EU, which is July the 1st, 2013. That's why we won't witness any big crowds at the border.
Apart from potential worries of difficulties in crossing the borders, Bosnia and Herzegovina fears being left on its own and is concerned there could be challenging divisions.
The sense of isolation, the sense of gap between Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia is also going to increase. And the current policy of the EU towards Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also towards the region of Western Balkans, is such that there is no hope that in foreseeable future of 5 to 10 years with the current policy, this gap is going to narrow. In fact, it's probably going to become much wider.
Meanwhile, former Croatian Foreign Minister Vesna Pusic told Euronews that the extension of the EU external borders will bring improvements to the region.
This is not enlargement. This is consolidation of European territory. These countries are surrounded by European territory of the European Union, and it really is a question of European security. This can never be isolated in the sense of building a wall, because actually it's surrounded by European Union.
The EU hopes that Croatia's full membership will help stabilize the Western Balkan region. Croatia is set to find out if its application was accepted on Thursday.
Scientists, activists and delegates from nearly 200 countries are gathering in Canada this week to tackle one of the world's most pressing environmental issues, the loss of biodiversity and what can be done to reverse it. Without nature, we have nothing. That's the message from UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, who opened the COP15 summit.
We need governments to develop ambitious national action plans that protect and preserve our natural gifts and put our planet on a path to healing. We need businesses and investors to put protection first in their business plans and invest in sustainable production and extraction methods across every link of their supply chains. And we need a dramatic step up in climate action if global.
Guterres says science has already shown us enough reason to come together and fight climate change. The European Commissioner for the Environment has backed the message, calling for a global agreement.
We need a deal, but it has to be ambitious, so it has to have a 30 by 30 goal, which I think can be equivalent to 1.5 degrees, or the Paris moment, where we have agreed protection of 30% of land territories and 30% of marine territories. That's not going to be enough. Secondly, of course, we need to ensure at least 20% of nature restoration efforts to be deployed by the year 2030 and by the year 2040.
The first day of COP15 got off to a rocky start as Indigenous and environmental activists disrupted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's opening speech. Their message: to save biodiversity, stop invading our lands.
A necklace fit for a queen. This stunning piece of jewellery composed of Roman coins, glass pendants and semi-precious stones was unearthed during the construction of a housing development in Northampton, England. Discovered in a Saxon grave, archaeologists announced the find on Tuesday. They say it's the country's finest example of a female early medieval burial to date.
I felt quite privileged to have a look at something that hasn't seen the daylight in more than 1300 years. And this is one thing I chose archaeology for. It is tangible and visible. And now I'm really glad I can share this with the whole world.
Researchers have discovered the owner was extremely wealthy and devout. They say this site will shed light on 7th century England at a time when Christianity was competing with age-old pagan beliefs. The treasure is soon to be exhibited at a local museum.